Are you recording?
Yep, just started.
Thank you.
So user-defined functions, or UDFs. They are created as objects. Once they're created, they're stored as objects. That means once they're created, they are ready to be used as many times as you may like any other object. So you will create by calling create function, followed by the name of the function. And if you want this function to receive any parameter, you can also provide that parameter. And along with the data type and the length. So this will create a function once we complete the rest of the code, but this is just a definition line. Create function, function name, in parentheses, parameters. Then you will need to tell that this function will return, so it's a value returning function, otherwise it will be a stored procedure, right? Stored procedures are non-value returning. So, and then you will say this function will return a single value of decimal type of this size. And then you can write the body that whatever somebody calls this function, I can call this one add 5. It will return whatever value you pass plus 5. Then I don't know if I already have a table called dummy or not. I will just run it to drop the table dummy, because I'll be creating a table dummy so that I can test this function. So once I drop the table, I will create, and then I will insert a couple values in that table so that I can then test it. So go ahead, create the table, insert these couple records, then we will learn to test this. Okay. Now let's test this one. So we will select the field decimal date, comma, add decimal date, means whatever value decimal date has, we will pass that value into the body of the function add 5. And we will return the results. Did you guys get the desired output?
Yep.
Everybody got the output, which is the value plus 5, two fields, two columns, the original value and plus 5. Okay. Now let's copy line number 2 through 5 and paste it, and we'll be creating our second function. Our next function will be called calc for calculation purpose. We will provide 2 parameters in this one as opposed to 1. One of them we will call sales, and the other one we'll call rate. It returns a value of decimal 8, 2. This function, whatever you call it, it will give you the product of sales and rate. So it's basically will calculate the percentage of the sales based on whatever rate you provide. So you won't have to create a formula anymore. Anytime you need to calculate rate of some amount, you call this function, you provide the value and the rate, and it'll return you the rate, the value based on the rate. Oh, I misspelled here. It should be decimal data. I called it decimal date. Anyway, I meant to say data, not date. But, well, that's what the field name is now. So let's test this. Select decimal date, comma, I'm going to call this one sales amount, and then call calc on the decimal date, and let's say I want to figure out the 5% of that as 5% of sales, comma, calc, decimal, comma, 0.095 as 9.5% of sales. Just to show you that you can call the same function several times and pass different values for it to display results accordingly. Okay, everybody got this one?
1 second.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting an error message. I don't know.
Getting an error message when you are calling it or when you're creating it?
Calling it.
Calling it, okay. Did you check to make sure that your return type is 8,2?
Returns 8,2 SQL sales times rate.
You have two parameters.
Mhm. How decimal? It tells me that the decimal was not found, the column decimal. Have the same select statement that you do.
Can you share your screen if I stop sharing? Okay. Oh, the name of the field is decimal date, not decimal.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. 1 second. Variable sales not found. Oh, because you call it sale on line number 16. Click OK,
Oh, okay.
and then change that to sales on line 16.
Just
Add the S to line 16.
line 16.
Make it sales.
I see.
Okay.
And then run it again.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, you may have to drop the function. Drop function, calc. Okay, semicolon. Now create that. Okay, now run that. Here you go.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Now these functions are called scalar valued functions because they return a single value. That's what we call them. Now, before we go on to our next function, I want you guys to create a couple of tables. So create these two tables. And then using SQL insert, go ahead and also insert the following data in each one of the two tables. So whenever you guys are done, give me a feedback. So when everybody is done with this, then we'll move on to creating the function. Only one person is done so far. Okay. Okay, Jose, you are done too. Okay, cool, awesome. Okay, so now that we are done creating the table and adding the data to it, we will now learn how you can create a function, especially an atomic function. Just like we learned to create an atomic procedure, you can create an atomic function. Do you guys remember from last week, what was the purpose of creating an atomic procedure?
Just so you do a batch of things at once so that you don't have like partial records if something fails.
So this is a way that you can create a procedure as a transaction, as a single unit of work.
Ah, that's right. Unit of work. That's what I was looking for.
So here you can also create a function as a single unit of work. Means if the function has a lot going on, then everything either goes through or nothing goes through. Okay, so we will create a function called department name, and we will pass employee ID as a parameter. It will return a variable character value of size 30. That will be the department name. Because that's the size we gave to the field, dname, department name. Whenever you're creating an atomic function or atomic procedure, you have to tell right away at the beginning that this will be treated as atomic. This will be my return variable. And my error message variable. So as you see, the declaration of variables is exactly the same between functions as we learned last week with stored procedures. Do you guys remember how we assign a value to a variable?
Set.
Set. So I'm writing a select command to do a join between the two tables on the common field. And I'm only selecting that department name where the employee ID matches, because I'm bringing in field from one table and I need to select field from another table based on that. So instead of returning an entire set of department names, I only want one department name. So I want it to match the department name in both tables and only select that department name where employee ID matches the parameter emp ID. So either the employee will be found or the employee will not be found. So I'm setting my error variable to say that the error employee concatenated with the employee ID not found. So that's my error variable. Now, typically, when you run an SQL statement, it may return 0 or more results. 0 results is not an error. 0 results is a perfectly fine SQL state. But for my function, I want to notify the user with some kind of an error message if it returns no rows. If it returns no rows, then v underscore department name will be null. So if v underscore department name is null, then I want to signal an error. It's pretty much like, if you remember from Java days, we throw exception. Java can let you explicitly throw in an exception when you want to raise an exception. That's what we are doing. We are raising an exception. We are raising a flag saying, if department is null, I want to raise a flag. I want to give it a number. This is a user-defined number, 80,000. And I want to set my error message to the variable. And then I'm going to return the department name if no errors are found. Go ahead and create the function first. Okay. Give me the feedback when you are done creating it. So then I'll show you how to test it.
Says message underscore txt is not valid.
Oh, my bad. I misspelled.
Oh, it's message text.
T-E-X-T.
Okay.
Yeah. Did that go through now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So again, when you guys are done, give me a feedback so I know that we can now move on to test after that. So Jose and Thomas, are you guys still working on it? Any errors, Jose? Oh,
I'll see you shortly in a few minutes.
oh,
Okay?
okay. Did you, oh, you want me to, you want to share your screen?
Oh, no, I have to go. I'll join the class again in about 25 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. So guys, let's test with a valid employee ID. So we have employee IDs 1, 2, 3. So I am calling the stored procedure in my select command that select star from department test DB2, because why am I choosing department test DB2? because that's where my department name is. So I'm selecting all the records from department table where the department name equals to, and now I'm calling this built-in function, this user-defined function and passing employee ID 1. So I'm expecting a result back. And let me know when you get a department name back. We should expect to get sales. Okay. Now I want you to test this again, but let's put a department that employee ID that doesn't exist, like 55. And what does it do now when you rerun it, but with an employee ID that doesn't exist?
Wow, it's a pop-up this time.
And does the error message says what we were expecting? Error employee ID not found.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
it has blanks in it. It has blanks in the employee ID.
Oh, it didn't display the employee ID field.
No, it did. It just, because it's 4 characters, it was 55 space.
Oh, okay, okay. Should trim it probably. Yeah, because v underscore error is 70 characters long, right? Interesting. I created it as a variable character. It still treated it as a character. So everybody got this. Okay. Now we will create another kind of a function where a function, instead of returning a single value, a function will return a table. Okay. So function that returns a table. So the function accepts one parameter of type character and its department ID. That's what it reads. And then what we want to do is, based on the department ID, we want to return an entire table with the data set. So we'll return a table with 3 fields because will be integer, EMP number will be character, and EMP name variable character. So it's 20. We're not done yet. Okay. So if you look at your employee table has how many fields? 3 fields, right?
3.
Okay. Yeah. However, I am not returning all 3 of them. I'm returning 2 fields from the table based on the 3rd field, and I will generate the 1st field. The 1st field is not part of the table. Okay. Now, how will I generate that field? I will return through row underscore number. It's a built-in function to return the row number. And followed by the two fields from the table, where department ID equals to P underscore department ID. Now that completes the function. Give me a green check when you are done creating it. Okay, Thomas, still working on it? Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Now let's test this. So we need to pass, we are selecting everything from, notice how I'm calling this, because the function returns a table. So I am also saying select star from, and I'm creating a temporary table on the fly. So select star from table. And inside the parentheses, I'm making a call to this function and passing an employee department ID. Based on that department ID, it is supposed to generate a table and return the result set to me. And I am aliasing that table as enum underscore emp. So that's what the row underscore number does. It's an online analytical processing function. And it generates a, I don't know what's wrong with my keyboard, pseudo column, which contains consecutive numbers 1 through the n of the return, not in the actual original table, the return values. Followed by over function call. And this would be our next example where we want to fill out the over parentheses so that you can see how it does the grouping. Did everybody get to see the results, right? That how the row number works? Now let's try to use the row number along with over and an order by clause. And what do you think this did?
It ordered them alphabetically.
So, yep, exactly. So it first ordered all the titles and then generated the row number after the order by clause. As opposed to the arrival sequence.
This feels like a hack, and I don't know why.
Feels like a hack. Okay.
It feels like we need to get something to order by twice, but we already have the order by clause. Let's add a function that orders by as well.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. Sequencing. Sequence by order by. Okay. Let's see if you can tell me what's going on here after you're done executing it.
So it's grouping things by the publisher ID and then sorting that group alphabetically and numbering the rows.
Very
Looks
good.
like, yeah, by their own categories as well.
Very good. Isn't it neat?
When does this start doing it? I'm guessing row number is the last one it does. So it starts sorting it by the pub ID first and then by the
Exactly.
title and then it numbers it. Okay.
Exactly. The over clause runs first, the row number runs last. Okay, everybody got this? So we're now going to move on to UDTs, or user-defined types. Now, when you're creating a user-defined data type, it's based on an existing data types. And you will generally use comparisons with comparisons clause. With comparisons clause pretty much means that this new type can be compared with other items of the same type using the comparison operators, which are equals to, greater than, less than, greater than equals to, less than equals to, not equals to. That's what it means, okay? So create this data type called US underscore dollars. Okay, is everybody done creating the type? Now let's put this to test by creating a table US underscore sales. Remember this check constraints that we learned? So this will create a table with 4 fields, and one of the fields is based on the user-defined type. When you're done creating the table, can you insert the data in the table? And the data will be inserted in a similar fashion as you would insert data in any other table. Once your guys are done inserting data, can you write a query to do this? Is it working? Yes, guys? Did you get it to work? No? Yes?
Well, it's given me an error, but that could also just be me.
Yeah.
So when you
Says
guys did something like
comparison operator
this,
not compatible.
it will gonna give you an error, because even though you said with comparisons, because total and is not the same data type as 10,000. That's why what you got to do is you got to do an explicit casting to US underscore dollars type. And try now. Should work.
Huh. So because I'm guessing you create type because it says create type by as and then a pre-existing like base type. Why isn't that just an automatic thing?
Because 10,000 is a larger data type than US underscore dollars. Because 10,000, it treats it as a full-blown data type, and US underscore dollars is decimal 9,2, it's fixed. So it runs into a type narrowing problem.
Okay.
Okay, so you got to narrow 10,000 to the same type as total for it to do the comparison. Okay, now I want you to create this another data type called GL underscore account number. This is a character type. So in our previous one, we created a numeric one. So create this character type. Just so that you can see how to create a data type on character type. And whenever you are done with that, then test this in a table so that you could see that it works exactly like number type. Okay, everybody get this working? Everybody got this working? Or only Oscar got it? Next, we will try another example. Create a data type called money, and then use it in this table. And notice I am creating all fields in this table modeled after money, sales as well as commission. I have no other data type. Then there will be a special test that we will be doing once you guys are done creating the type, the table, and have entered the following data in it. Done, Christian? You're done with this too? Okay.
Yep, sorry.
So now in the special test, what I would like you to do is select sum of salary and commission. So add them together as one output. So you will not going to use an aggregate function. You'll do, because we're not creating a sum of all salaries. We're just adding them.
Did I miss something, or can we not use plus?
Mm. So did you write something like this?
Did.
Yeah, that will not work. What is the error?
Operan blah 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 has been specified that is not valid.
Right, it's not valid. So what you got to do is, because they're user-defined types, we got to overload the addition operator. Okay, so that'll be our next thing. Now, just like you can create or replace anything, you can also create or replace a function. But this time, you're not replacing a function. You are replacing an overloaded operator, which will accept two values of money type. And it will return one value of money type. And the source of the operation will be that this is how you will call it, by using a plus sign. And in the parentheses, you will pass two values. So you're basically casting the incoming values to decimals to add it. Okay. So first, create this function. Then I'll show you how this addition will work. It will not work the way it's on line 119. We'd write it differently. So we are pretty much saying treat it as addition, however, of decimal type.
Says return is not expected.
Oh,
There it is.
returns, my bad. Returns. Yeah, miss an S. Returns. Did that work?
Yep.
Okay. Now let me copy paste line number 119 and 125. This will be called like this. Okay. Did that work?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, this seems like a lot of effort when I could have just made them decimal in the first place.
Yeah. Like what's the use case of these? Because they just seem a little too clunky for their own good.
Well, the thing is this, that sometimes developers want to create more meaningful data types and of limited size, rather than using full-blown decimal types. So in that case, they may create their own types based on the existing types, and that will automatically, because in some databases, you will see that they provide you with currency type. This is just to give one example. Or in some other applications, you may have very specific type names. So just by looking at the data type, you could see its purpose. So if they ever have to do that, and if it's a calculated field, then they may have to overload the operators. And once they overload the operator once, because the function needs to be only done once, and then the calls can be done 1,000,000 times. So if you notice difference between line 119 and 125, there isn't much of a difference as opposed to where you're putting your plus. The only one-time effort is 121 through 123. And this is just a very, brief example with one commonly used type, money. Everybody get this to work? Okay, guys, let's take a break till 10:25, and then when you come back at 10:25, we will work with triggers.
Alrighty.
So before we went on break, we were talking about that upon returning, we will be working with our last topic, and that will be about triggers. So before we start working with the triggers, we need to create some tables on which we will work with the triggers. So I will give you some tables to create. So create these 4 tables.
You meant to be sharing your screen.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Okay. Asking me to reconnect.
Are you recording, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Now, the whole purpose of creating these is to make sure that we have a table called organization trigger, which maintains organization name, the total employees, the total departments. We have a department trigger to maintain the department ID, the department name, the total employee, and the employee trigger to maintain the employee ID, the employee name, and the department ID, and an activity log table. So basically, anytime we insert a new employee with a department number, we want the department table's total employee count for that department to go up by 1 automatically. Similarly, if an employee is deleted, we want the employee count for that department to go down. If an employee moves from one department to another, we want one department to lose and another department to gain employees. So all of these operations we need to do with triggers, and they will be done behind the scene. So to get started, I want to be able to insert one record in my main table, which will be this record. Insert into the table for organization trigger, this value. Okay. Now we need to start creating the triggers. So create trigger new underscore info. And usually when triggers are created, you need to define when you want the trigger to be executed. I want this to be executed after an insert on the employee trig table. For each row that gets inserted, Okay, so that's what this trigger means. So right now we are just creating the triggers. We will test them afterwards. So anytime I insert a new employee, I want the employee count to go up by 1 inside the org trig table. When you're done with this one and are done creating it, you copy paste this one, and we're going to call the second one emp_delete. After delete on emp trigger, for each row, decrease the total employee count by 1. Okay. Now, let's create the third trigger. We're going to call this one new department. Create trigger, new department. After insert on, department trigger, for each row, we want total department count to go up by 1. So every time I insert a new department in the department table, then I want in the organization trigger table, the total department count should go up by 1. And my fourth trigger will be the delete trigger on the department. So this will be department delete for each delete on department trigger. So give me a green check only when you're done creating all 4 triggers. So everybody, when you are done with this, give me a green check. So then we will move on to our test. So now the first thing is I'll be doing my tests by inserting one record in department trig table, and then we will check department trig and organizational trig tables to make sure that the change has taken place. So before we even run these tests, I want you to select all from organization trigger so that you know what the data looks like now. It should be zeros and GRCC. Insert the following record in the department trigger table. And then check the tables below to make sure that you can see the change. Okay, Jose. So once you guys are done inserting the record and then checking to make sure the change is taking place, we will then do another test by inserting another data item and then checking again. So we should have two records in the department trig table, and the organizational trigger table will have only one record, but now the department count should be 2. So that was our first test for insertion. That as we insert, the department count goes up by 1 for each insert in the org table. This will be our test number 3 now. We had test number 1, we had test number 2. This will be our test number 3. Okay. In this one, we will delete everything from department trig table. As a result, the department trig should be empty, and the department count should now go down to 0 in organizational trigger table. Once you're done checking for deletion, now let's put the data back in place and make sure that the organizational trigger has department count back to 2. So we have now looked at so far the insert and the delete triggers are firing up. Next, we need to look at the update trigger. That we will create a trigger that after an update takes place on any of the values in the department trigger table, it should log an activity in the activity log table that the following operation took place. So we will create a trigger log update department after update on department trigger. Now notice I'm now saying for each statement, I'm not saying for each row. Okay, for each row means every row that gets affected. Now update can affect 1 or more rows, but I'm not reporting an activity for every row that gets affected. I'm reporting an activity after all rows gets affected, 1 insert or 1 activity log for all the changes. So that's what I'm doing for each statement. So once we are done creating the trigger, we will update our IT department's name to accounting department. So we are running an update on department trigger. So one of the department's name gets updated, and then we will check the department trigger and the activity log table to see that the trigger was fired behind the scene or not. Very similar to the department trigger table. I'm going to create some more update triggers. On other tables as well. So the first one, I'm creating a log update on EMP table. So after update on EMP trigger table, I want to make an insert in the activity log that this time an update took place on employee trigger table. Can you write a trigger so that the table can update back on its own update? Can you write a trigger such that the table will insert a new record on its own update? So far, activity log is inserting on other tables updates. And the answer to that question will be yes. You can do that. So I could very well create another trigger called log underscore update activity update on activity log table. That every time there is an update on the activity log table, you will say report the timestamp along with that this was done on activity log table.
Won't this create an endless loop?
No, it's only an update. It's not an insert. So on an update, you're inserting. You're not doing update on update. Update on update will create an infinite loop. And another one on the organization table. So these are my 4 update triggers, 3 over here and 1 we created above this one. Okay, so once we have all these triggers created, we now want to test. So we have some triggers created on update, some triggers created on insert. So let's try to insert a new record, one more record in department trigger table. And let's check to see what happened after that. Because now we will run an update on the organization table because one new department was inserted. As a result, the organizational department count will go up by 1. As a result, the activity log will report on update on activity log table. Okay. Now, the most interesting thing the triggers can do is when we are inserting new employees, we want the department count to go up by 1 for that department's count to go up by 1 for an employee, because when we insert an employee, we always say, put this employee in so-and-so department. That's one thing. The other thing is that when we delete an employee, that employee's department count should go down by 1. Third, when we move employees from one department to another, we want one department to lose and another department to gain. Now that's the most trickiest one. Why is that the most trickiest one? When we move an employee from one department to another, we want one department to lose and another department to gain. Why do you think that's tricky? Christian, are you saying something?
Sorry, I had my mic muted.
Oh.
It shouldn't be, right? Because if you're deleting and then inserting, it should just
I'm updating,
work.
updating an employee's department.
Oh,
Updating an employee's department from, let's say, 101 to 102.
right.
As a result of the update, 101 should lose an employee count and 102 should gain an employee count.
Right.
Why is
The
that?
issue with that You'd have to have the previous department ID and the new department ID.
Very good. And triggers can do that. Okay, triggers can tap onto the value before and after change. And that's what we'll be looking at. To create trigger old department update. After update on department, you can actually write trigger on fields that I want this to run only after an update on department ID. Sorry, off department ID on employee trigger table. Okay. Now, I need to use some built-in features like I want to be referencing new table as n underscore table, old as o underscore row for each row that gets affected. So old is a built-in entity which maintains the value before change. So we are saying that on update of the department ID field in the employee trigger table, I want to create a table which will have a reference of old with old, the value before change. And I want to update the department trigger table by decreasing the employee count by one of the department ID before change. That's why I'm referencing the O underscore row, which is the department ID referenced by the old record. Similarly, I want the other department to gain an employee. So I'll just copy paste this one, the one that you guys just wrote. I'll just copy paste that one and I'll change a few things like this will be new department update trigger after update of department ID on employee treg, referencing new table as n table, but this time I will tap into new, which is the value after change as n underscore row. We want the employee count to go up by 1 for the department ID that matches the new one. Now, before we start making more changes to the process, I want to do one test. I want to set all employees for all departments to 0. For all departments, I want to change their employee count to 0. And I want to check the activity log table to make sure that it's reported on that update. So what triggers we just wrote, the two triggers that we just wrote, were only when you move an employee. Okay, we still need to write triggers that when you insert a new employee, we still need to write a trigger when you insert a new employee, and we also need to write a trigger when you delete an existing employee. So we need to write two more triggers. So when you insert a new employee in a department, that department employee count must go up by 1. And when you delete an employee in a department, let's go down by 1. Okay. So these will be our next two triggers. Okay. Let's copy the last trigger that we wrote and paste it for necessary changes. New department, new emp insert, new emp insert. After insert on emp treg table.
Don't we already have this?
Do we have new emp insert already?
The new info trigger up above.
Which one?
The new underscore info trigger is the first one that we wrote.
That is updating the organizational trigger, not department.
Ah, okay.
This is updating department as the new employee gets added to a department. Once you are done creating the trigger, test by inserting a new employee, and then check the department trigger and organizational trigger tables. I should say also activity log table. Now let's create the trigger for deletion. So this will be delete emp department after delete on employee trigger. We want to tap onto the value before deletion. So that's why we are tapping onto the old value. And we want to decrease the employee count by 1 based on the old value. After we test, we will check the tables.
It is not working for me.
The deletion did not work.
Yeah. Well, no, the trigger.
None of the triggers worked.
No, this latest. It's just this latest one, the delete trigger. It says with referencing new tables end table. It says correlation name or table end table not valid. This is just not valid for it for some reason. So new correlation name or new table end table was specified in delete trigger. Do we just exclude referencing new table as end table? Because it's a delete trigger.
Oh, the table name doesn't matter. It's just a table name.
I know the table name doesn't matter, but it's not letting me specify a table. Specify a table name at all.
Oh,
It says the correlation name or table end table is not valid for the trigger.
If you just update it instead of saying new table, you make it old table, and that does the trick. That's what the error message tells you to do, anyways.
if you update the new table to the word old table,
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah. If you rename it to new
Uh-huh.
real quick and then just try and run it so you get the error message.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yep. All right, it did work now.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now, just 1 minute. Okay, so you guys have a new review to work on during the week. This will be your review number 12. I am, okay, also your final exam, both parts should also be available. And the final exam hands-on part, which talks about this final exam script, you guys already ran that in the class. This is the one, like this is the script of the book. So you don't need to rerun that. Which is for these 10 problems at the bottom. So you guys have one, you have all these quizzes. Some of you didn't get a chance to do them in class, 9 through 11. So however, you have 9 through 12, 4 quizzes to do during the week. And I'm not giving you any more assignments. And the final exam, 2 parts. Hands-on and multiple choice 1. And that should be all for today. And thank you for taking the class. And that's it. Today was our last in-class meeting.
Yeah, it's weird. It still does not feel like I have enough time to complete everything. Like, it feels like we should have like 4 more weeks or something.
Yeah. So Jose, are you taking Java in the summer? Or
I will, yes.
okay, but just wanted to let you know because it's up on the summer schedule now.
Yes, I think I've already registered for it.
Okay, okay, great.
Yeah, that's the only class I'm gonna take.
Yeah, then that runs in the evening. So it's yeah.
That's good. Yes.
I don't know. Will that be difficult for you to come because it starts at 5:30 and it'll be 3:30 p.m. for you guys. Or you could take the first hour from the office and then do the remaining from home.
Oh, I think I can do the whole thing from the office. Or
Right, right. That's what I'm saying. So you will do some from the office and some from home.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, because there's 2 hours difference, so
Yes.
yeah. Okay. I think I have one more person who told me that he wants to take that course, but he's also in a different time zone.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, he may also have to do that if he decides to take that course. Anyway,
Now, that class there are 2 classes, Java courses, right?
in the software development program, yes.
Okay, good.
The-
'cause I
yeah. So the summer one is the same one as it was in spring, the Java 1,
okay,
and the fall will have the Java 2.
okay, great.
So that way, taking care of that in summer will give you a head start or for the fall one.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This class was great.
Oh,
This
thank
class
you.
is very good, very good.
Yeah, it's a good review on. I mean, not even a review. There's a bunch of stuff about SQL that I did not know about before. So,
Good.
thank you for teaching it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome, guys. So yeah, I mean, work on it however you want to work on it, however you want to space it out in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, that's it. Just don't wait till the last minute, because with the final exam, as soon as the class is done, we have X number of hours to turn in the final grades. So that's why work with the deadline.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 See you. Well, we still see you Monday, right?
Yes. We'll see you
Okay.
Monday. Cool.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.